Welcome, everyone, to another bonus episode of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, and as always, I am coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. But no, I am not the only one who is screaming in high heels throughout the halls of this B-movie cavern. No, who else is here with me?
Well, it's me, Psycho from Texas, Steve Guntley, and this is the podcast about dolphin communication and scream queens and a factory in Iowa. That's because this is a podcast about Screaming in High Heels, which is a documentary about some of the reigning B-movie queens and friends of the show, made by a friend of the show who is actually here with us today. We've had you on once before, but we were not able to completely encapsulate the totality of your career and all the various cool things that you've done. So please introduce yourself, special guest.
Hi, I am Jason Paul Collum, and I am a filmmaker, author, journalist, a producer, sometimes actor. I use it with very, very low expectations. Yeah, I got my hand on, and a teacher on top of that.
And a partridge in a pear tree, which is so many hats going on. It's amazing.
Yeah, people know me most from Screaming in High Heels, as you mentioned. I did Sleepless Nights, the Slumber Party Massacre documentary for Shout Factory. October Moon, which was the first gay-themed horror film. We battled. Oh, I forgot the name of it. Another one.
The Voodoo Academy, or
no? That technically was no. That was technically a horror for women, as they promoted it.
Horror for women, like Playgirl.
We can get into that later, but that was Mr. David Dakota wisely begat the horror for women. I'm air quoting here. It was totally meant for gay guys, but
of course,
back then you didn't promote it like that. So, and then I wrote a couple of books, including They Made How Many, which goes into all of the horror. Oh, you both have it. Wow.
Oh yeah, we're here for it.
We both have it.
Yeah, it's a guide to every horror franchise that exists if the original film came out by New Year's Eve of '99, and then, but it is up to date. So if something came out in 2020, I think the last volume came out in 24. So everything up to 2024, as far as how many installments there were.
That's a very useful compendium for me, because one of my favorite things to do is, somebody will mention a movie and I'll say, oh yeah, it's pretty good. Did you see any of the sequels? And they'll give me that look and say, like, they made a sequel to that. And this is the book for that. This is the book compiling all of those. They made a sequel for that kind of movies, which is very helpful in my.
I have had a similar conversation a lot, Steve, where I have been the person who informed somebody that Pumpkinhead 2 Blood Wings existed.
Yes. Which I'm gonna have you on the podcast this year to talk about that, because there's a video game for that movie as well. So
not to mention Pumpkinhead 3 and 4.
There's so many Pumpkinheads, yeah. But really, the main kind of threat. I mean, we're going to be talking a little bit about all the different aspects, some of the books and some of the parts of the career we haven't covered yet. But using Screaming in High Heels as like a nice entry point here, both because we haven't had the opportunity to talk about any documentaries on this show, so it's good to have the opportunity to talk about that. And B, this is covering a subject that we love very deeply, and a couple of people in this movie that we know and care for very deeply, which is very cool. So we're talking about Scream Queens today. This is the documentary about Scream Queens, very specifically focusing on 3 women who have been instrumental to our show: Brinke Stevens, Michelle Bauer, and Linnea Quigley. And I had such a fun time watching this movie. I think it's a delight. It's right down my alley. It's covering a lot of things that are right in my wheelhouse. I just kind of want to know from you, Jason, how did you first kind of get involved in this scene and meeting these amazing women? And how did you decide to kind of get this project off the ground?
Oh, geez. You guys got a half hour?
We sure do. We got nothing but time.
So my love for Linnea, Brinke, and Michelle goes back to my teenage years. The first of them that I was able to meet was Brinke, and she eventually, when she found out that I was moving out to Los Angeles, she said, I know how 23-year-old boys are. You eat McDonald's and sleep all day. So she made sure that I came over to her house once a month for a home cooked meal. And whenever she would have these backyard barbecues, she would invite all the B-movie people, like actors, directors, producers. And she said, come to these parties so I can introduce you to the people you need to know. And that really was the launching pad of my career. but also the Scream Queen thing, right? So I ended up working for Dave Dakota and J.R. Bookwalter. Dave is best known for Sorority Babes and the Slime Ball Bolorama. JR is probably best known for The Dead Next Door.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I began my journalism career, which was focusing mostly on the Scream Queens. And the very first article I ever got published was the Slumber Party Massacre Retro for Femme Fatales magazine. And it was a hit. And so I continued to write Scream Queens for them for years. And then I was able to meet many of these actresses, it took actually many years to meet Linnea and Michelle in person, but I was able to meet Felissa Rose and Denise Duff and Judith O'Day and Julie Strain and so many of these amazing women. And as I was interviewing them, I think the public kind of perceived a lot of these women as bimbos. Do we still use that word?
You go for it. Yeah, I think it's been used pejoratively to apply to this genre and this era of actors for sure. Yeah,
it's not a word that people use all that often, but recently on the show we put out an interview we did with Anita Rosenberg, who's the director of Assault of the Killer Bimbos.
Yep.
We use the word a lot in that recording. So
we do.
We kind of, we brought the national average use up.
Okay, so for the youngins out there, a bimbo is basically a woman who is not very smart, particularly to be in these B horror movies. The girls who take their clothes off, die in some way horribly, or get possessed and turn into vampires, blah, blah, blah. So as I was meeting these women through the magazine, I was discovering how incredibly smart they all were. Brinke has, do I say doctorate? She has a PhD.
I believe that's right. Yeah.
In marine biology.
Mm-hmm.
And I was even meeting so many of them were very smart, intelligent women who had careers outside of making movies. Like Judith O'Day was running a business in corporate America. So that led to me directing Something to Scream About. That was my first documentary, which was kind of a everything in the cookie kind of a documentary, right?
Right.
It was just the daily lives of this group of women, Debbie Rochon, Felissa Rose again, who how do they make a living doing this thing that they love? And you find that they love making these B movies. You hear a lot of them are like Demi Moore's well, she won't talk about Parasite, right?
Right.
Right. And Jennifer Aniston won't talk about Leprechaun. Right. So I was meeting these women who loved it.
Yeah.
They just loved being in these horrible, cheesy, campy, occasionally scary B movies.
And Jason, in the doc, you give the descriptor to Debbie Rochon as one of the hardest working people out there. And I just have to give a shout out to Debbie Rochon because she's a friend of the show. She is such a great champion of our podcast. I've heard her plug our podcast on other shows. She's one of the first people to like our social media posts and share things. She is awesome. And she has just been
sweetheart.
Once she came on board and did the interview with us, she has been our one of our biggest supporters since then.
Yeah.
And so
Debbie
to hear her talked about that way, I'm she is just always seems to always be moving and always be working.
Yeah. And I actually enjoyed Debbie so much making Something to Scream About. I hired her to work on October Moon 2, and I almost kind of injured her.
No.
We had a fake sliding knife, but with all the goo on it, the blood on it, it started to stick, and we pushed it into her bosom. And she was very cordial about it. She was like, hey, FYI, you're kind of killing me here for real. So, but again, she was
good note
and still delightful afterwards. So I love Debbie. So that anyways, so Something to Scream About kind of led to the project that we now know as, some people refer to it as a sister movie, which would be Screaming in High Heels.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to focus, because Something to Scream About was so kind of all over the place. I wanted it to like a hard focus on Brinke, Linnea, and Michelle, and how this version of a Scream Queen truly began.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think this movie does a really great job of sort of interrogating what that term Scream Queen means and differentiating between what is a Scream Queen and what's not. Like the ladies even talk about it in the movie. It's like they'll have a lot of actresses who appeared in a horror movie or died in a horror movie or did a horror themed like photo shoot or something like that, and then they dub themselves Scream Queens, and it's not really a title that they've earned. I mean, the term itself has kind of a fluctuating definition. Some of the actresses embrace it. Some, like our friend Barbara Crampton, kind of reject the label for reasons, that are, I think, valid. I think because the term can be a little reductive sometimes and doesn't really describe the breadth of what these characters and what these actresses are doing. But I think Brinke, Linnea, and Michelle in particular really personify this sort of dying idea of like a B movie Scream Queen. They kind of came up with the direct-to-video market as it was sort of arising. They do a lot of these movies that are fast and cheap, and they are game and willing to share their bodies and share their experiences like that, in a way that a lot of actresses, like you mentioned, kind of look down on, and I think that's kind of the crucial difference.
Well, yeah, and also I want to give a compliment to something that the documentary highlights early on, which is not something I would think about directly, but is totally true, which is kind of how the home video market destroyed the drive-in theater. And
yeah,
to me, like the drive-in aesthetic is this thing that hopefully will never go away. As Joe Bob says, the drive-in will never die.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think one of the reasons I love Scream Queens of this variety is that there's a real kind of like cult feeling to the stuff that they're in, the stuff that they promote, and it's got this real like drive-in vibe to it. Whereas like I grew up watching Reanimator and From Beyond and other movies with Barbara Crampton in them, and Barbara was a little bit more kind of leaning towards the mainstream than some of the things that Brinke and Linnea and Michelle are in. I mean, listen, anyone who knows me at all knows how much I love B-movie Scream Queens. And honestly, sometimes the deeper the cut, the better. Steve knows how horny on Maine I am all the time for Elizabeth Caton.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Whose career I have the Vice Academy Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray box set.
Yeah.
I may be the only person in the world who owns that.
Well, and
I think you'd be surprised how many people actually own it.
Yeah.
I mean, but true. I love this doc because, when the mainstream audience thinks of the term Scream Queen, they're immediately going to Jamie Lee Curtis, or maybe they're going back a little further, Janet Leigh, maybe Fay Wray back in King Kong or something like that. But you're typically thinking of this very specific archetype that arose since Halloween and has like become like a slasher staple in particular. But I think you maybe don't necessarily, Linnea and Brinke and Michelle are not necessarily the names that the mainstream public are immediately going to think of, but they are very much integral to this sort of role and to this designation of the Scream Queen and to this enduring like B movie subgenre that's still going today. And I think these three set themselves apart because they don't turn their noses up at this genre stuff, and they fully embrace it. Many of them have been on our show and are like real champions for this stuff.
Yeah. And the thing is, so for people who kind of don't get it, I best describe it as, so Jamie Lee Curtis, Fay Wray, Janet Leigh, they would be kind of like, again, your mainstream Scream Queens, which that's not how they were really referred to back then either, though, right?
That term came up in like the 90s. I forget the name of the critic who sort of
more so. It was actually in the 80s. It was in the 80s, but it was aimed mostly at Jamie Lee Curtis.
Right.
And then in the mid 80s, the Scream Queen that we're now referring to with Brinke, Linnea, and Michelle is more the direct to video, the drive-in style, right? Like they appear, like you guys said earlier, they appear in these cheap, fast, sometimes good, a lot of times not very good movies that are made for, $75,000, which back then was still a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
But shot on film. A lot of people there are people out there who criticize modern B movies, right? Because you can shoot them with your phone now.
You can,
right? Well, you're not really a scream queen. It's not really a movie because you made it with your phone. And that kind of goes even like to the camcorder stuff, which I started in the 90s doing. They're not, real movies. I'm doing my air quotes again.
Yeah.
Simply because they weren't made on film. Even 8mm film gets more respect than video, right? So, but I think Brinke, Linnea, and Michelle, and the few others that kind of were in that era, were shooting movies on something that could technically still be shown on a big screen that might get a 1-week run in a theater. And Linnea, of all of the three girls, had the most movies that not only did get theatrical releases, but caused some controversy and have become lasting staples. But she's got Night of the Demons, Silent Night, Deadly Night,
Return of the Living Dead. Yeah.
The biggest one,
obviously. Yeah.
The biggest one that just left my brain.
Yeah.
So
she's got half of Graduation Day.
Yeah, she does. And doesn't even get the credit for it.
Yeah.
And she was before Linnea became Linnea Quigley, she had a pretty stacked resume.
Yeah.
If you look at her, even late 70s, early 80s stuff, she already had a bulk of good product behind her.
Yeah.
So before Return of the Living Dead kind of came along. And I don't know that Linnea even became Linnea until years after.
Until the horror workout video, she had her own, she was a name.
Right.
Yeah, she got to put her name in front of the title. Yeah.
Right. Because in 1987 really is when this all kind of kicked off.
Yeah.
Three girls have been doing stuff, but in 87 is when the video stores, that was the peak of direct to video.
Right.
And so these girls were making, I think Linnea made 11 movies in 1 year, which again, back in 1987 was a big deal because these things were shot on film. And that's how she got the People magazine article. So.
And that
sorry,
really No.
From 87,
exactly right, yeah.
From 87 into 88, I'm just thinking obviously she was in Creepazoids and then Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bolorama and Night of the Demons. And there's a handful of other ones, and I don't remember it's 88 or 89, but Nightmare Sisters also in that time.
Was shot in 87, yeah.
Yeah. So I the kind of a handful of the first things I think of when I think of her name, all in that same probably 15-month stretch.
And this is the era that's so foundational just to everything that we're talking about on this show, because Empire Studios kind of made their bread on movies that would get a theatrical release for maybe a week or two and do barely any business, and then they'll come out on VHS and just do gangbusters, and so that kind of helped build the foundation for everything that we're talking about on this show. And so for a certain subset of nerds like us, these three women are such icons, that they really kind of, and they've served as kind of ambassadors. And I think one of the really cool things that this documentary delves into is what it means to have this label of Scream Queen, to embrace it and to fully encapsulate it, and also to be a human being who is aging, and to be a woman who is aging, specifically in an industry that values youth and and does not really write a lot of roles for older women. And I think this movie kind of explores the very different approaches that these three women have to aging along with the industry. You mentioned Brinke is kind of fully thrown herself into it and really embraced it and become a director and become, a producer and really spearheaded a lot of these projects. Michelle stepped away from the industry for a really long time and just kind of took a break from it. And then Linnea sort of bridged the gap between the two. She took a break to take care of her family, but she still does conventions and she still does movies from time to time, and has started ramping it up a little bit over time. And I thought that was a really cool approach to look at it, and this movie's 15 years old now, so and they're all still kind of kicking ass in the industry and sort of finding their own niche.
Yeah. Brinke is now 72. And I know Linnea and Michelle are not far behind. They're in their 60s still, but I think they're 67, 68, right around there. And it's amazing that Brinke at the age of 72 is still knocking out 10 to 15 movies a year.
Yeah.
So she's about to hit number 300.
Damn.
So
That's crazy.
and she's threatening to chop off her hair at number 300.
Okay. All right. All right.
Because I talked to her about this a couple months ago, and she's just she's kept her hair long because it's kind of part of her image, right?
Right.
But she's like, but at 72, I'm not really doing nude shower scenes anymore. So
she's kind of got that, like she's that sort of Betty Page sort of rockabilly haircut that she's had for such a long time. It's like really very kind of iconic and associated with her.
I don't want to timestamp this recording too much because obviously we have some time between when we record and when it releases. I don't want to give too much inside baseball, but we did not even realize that today is in fact Linnea Quigley's 68th birthday.
Hey, happy birthday, Linnea.
Happy birthday, Linnea.
Yeah. Jason, I don't know if you've had a chance to see the Full Moon movie Trophy Heads. Came out in like 2016.
I loved it.
One of my very favorite movies that we've covered.
Yes.
I think that movie is so smart about the way, like it feels like a natural extension of your documentary in a lot of ways, because it's letting all three of these actresses are in the movie along with Denise and Jackie Lavelle and like a bunch of other amazing screen queens from throughout the years. And it's commenting very directly on this idea of Hollywood chewing you up and spitting you out and like not really valuing you as you get older. And it's a pretty fantastic satire actually. And all of the women are so game and so funny in that movie. But yeah, I was thinking about that one a lot watching this documentary. 100%. Just being like, yeah, they're really owning it.
I was wondering the same thing myself. And honestly, I have a small Trophy Heads anecdote, which I didn't think I would get the chance to say, but not too long ago, a couple of months ago, I went to a convention and Darcy DeMoss was there. And I have this, I think it's like a Japanese promotional thing for Jason Lives. And so I had her sign it and I said, I also really enjoy Trophy Heads. And she told me I was the single person in her entire convention going experience who has ever mentioned Trophy Heads. And I said, well, that's unfortunate because it's so fun.
Denise had a similar reaction too. She was really excited that we found that movie and we're kind of spreading the gospel.
And that the thing is, the movie is a direct result of Screaming in High Heels.
Yeah.
Because it literally, so is Cougar Cult. I don't know if you guys have seen that one.
No.
So the doc did so well because it aired. We sold it to NBC, or licensed, I should say, licensed to NBC, and then they they put it on Chiller, which I think is gone now, and they put it on Sci-Fi Network. And it did so well, it just kind of caught everybody's attention right at the time. And so then all of a sudden we had Cougar Cult come out, and then we had Trophy Heads come out, and this was all within a short amount of time. And it was this like little burst of the three ladies and those that went with them, like Denise Duff and Darcy DeMoss. And it didn't do well. The Trophy Heads didn't do well. I'm like, this is literally one of the best things that Full Moon has put out in forever.
Yeah,
it is so funny. And it's so well written. And again, like you said, it's well acted. And I need to point out Denise Duff and Jackie Lavelle. They play off of each other so comedically well.
They really do.
We told Denise, it's like, we want a whole like procedural series of you two as like odd couple, like police detectives solving crimes. Like they are so funny together. And it's such a great contrast.
Yeah, and again, it's promoted as a horror movie, right? Because the cover is all their chopped off heads on a wall, but there's almost no actual horror in it. It is meant to be a comedy.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's truly a very funny, like, I never get tired of. That's one of my favorite discoveries from this show is that movie, and I really push people towards it. I mean, so you mentioned NBC picked it up, so that was like you had this really positive response to this documentary. Yeah,
of all of the stuff that I've done over the last 30 years, that is hands down the most publicity I have ever gotten. October Moon came pretty close. I got a lot of magazine coverage, appeared on a couple talk shows for that one. But Screaming in High Heels, I had people approaching me for interviews when podcasts were very first kind of starting. We got magazine coverage. And it's the thing that it lasts. It's of all the things that are still selling of mine, that's what I make the most money from.
Oh, wow.
Is the documentary. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought it was
And
great.
there's-
Like we mentioned the three women mostly, but you also include a lot of other fixtures from kind of this era. You know, Fred Olin Ray and Jay Richardson and Richard Gabai and all of these guys, and they're also all very candid about. They're at this tier where like Jamie Lee Curtis can go on talk shows and talk about her Scream Queen days because she's an Oscar winner and she's a mainstream like movie star in a lot of other ways. And like, but somebody like Jay Richardson or Brink or people like that, they feel a little judged by people in their lives for the movies that they make. And they have to, like Michelle, kind of a heartbreaking moment in the movie where she just like straight up says, I can't talk about it with people. Like I hide it. Like I don't tell people about these movies I make just because I don't want to deal with people's judgment. Like I'm not ashamed of it, but I just don't want to have that conversation and have to have people look at me differently.
Right. And there's a clip.
Yeah.
And there's a clip that I don't think we used. I don't remember if it's because she didn't want us to use it or if it just didn't fit in within it, but it was more so for her daughter. She had when her daughter was in middle school, all the boys in her classes started watching those cheap horror movies on TV, and guess whose mom shows up naked? So then she kind of had to, Michelle had to explain to her daughter, well, honey, mommy used to make a certain kind of movie that, before I had you.
Yeah.
And now I'm a mom, and those movies are going to exist forever. So she had to kind of ease her daughter into it. And that was part of why she pulled away from the industry, was to raise her daughter. You know, it was more important to her. And now that her daughter is grown, she's kind of delved back into it, and I think that's why we see her more. And she kind of comments in the documentary about when people approach her to be in new movies, she knows that it's related to back then.
Sure.
She's being put in there as a piece of nostalgia.
Which has got to have its own kind of baggage too. You don't want to feel like you're a prop in that sense. You want to come in, if you're an actor, you want to come in and play a character. You want to play, somebody with a little depth and dimension. So I can understand being kind of a little, it's an interesting conflict kind of at the center of it, because the horror community is incredibly welcoming and incredibly supportive, but there is like a toxic element to it. And when you have actresses like these who are kind of known for a long time for showing their bodies and things like that, like it does attract a certain kind of attention as well, where fans might feel like they have ownership or right to kind of trot out these images.
I think it has to do with the support system you have too, because in the sense you get in the documentary is that Brink was pretty well supported by friends and family. Linnea was supported by friends and family, and then Michelle Bauer is the only one in the doc who really said that the people around her would refer to her movies as pornography.
Yeah,
which and brings its own stigma.
Right. And, and people do, and I, again, kind of mentioned this in the documentary, but that people tend to lump the horror films and pornography into one ball, simply because they often have nudity. They often have, fake sex scenes, women who run around in, white t-shirts in a rainstorm, fall over nothing in their high heels. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The title.
Yeah, exactly.
But people, it's also the same people who probably don't watch them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it goes back to Silent Night, Deadly Night, when all those protesters were out there, all the moms were against it. And then like this reporter goes up and says, well, what do you think of the movie? And they were like, and the response was often, well, I haven't seen it.
Obviously I wouldn't watch it.
Well, you have an opinion about it, but you've never seen it. Okay.
Yeah. You have an idea of what you think it is. Yeah. No, and there's a lot of misinterpretation. I mean, I still remember Brink was one of our earliest like special guests, like, bonus episode guests that we had on the show. And it is really noticeable right from the get-go how smart she is. Like she's just really whip smart and like intelligent in a way, like both as somebody who like markets herself and presents herself, but also as like the way that you think of a smart person, like a scientist with glasses in a lab. Like it's kind of crazy how smart
it's that, but she also, she does voiceover work, and she just has such a fantastic speaking voice.
Yeah.
Like just listening to her talk was like so soothing.
Right.
Yes.
And so and so kind of going back to like the bimbo argument, there's just such this perception that if you look a certain way, and if you're willing to do nudity in a movie, and if you're in movies that are not always of the highest quality, that you've got to be dumb in some way. And that's just truly not the case with any of these women.
Right. And there have been a couple of minor experiences, and I mean very minor experiences, with actresses who've done these movies that I interviewed more so for the magazine, for Femme Fatales, that I was like, oh no.
Yeah, right.
And not a stupid thing. It was more of a judge of drug issues.
Right.
But that was not the bulk. The bulk of these women are very well educated, trying to learn a living, and most of them aren't even trying to be rich. They're trying to they're very blue collar. They just want to pay the bills, and that's something, Debbie Rochon kind of goes into that in Something to Scream About. Just, she's like, she's making some movies, she's making $200 a day, some movies she's making $1,000 a day. Sometimes she goes for a month and a half without making any movies, and she's still got to pay her rent. And that's the thing for me is people come up to me often with all of my movies, and I tend to work with a lot of the girls that we've already mentioned. And they're like, how did you get Brinke Stevens in your movie? How did you get Judith O'Dea in your movie? And I'm like, well, I asked.
Yeah.
It's really that simple, and they're working. They need to make money. They don't, some of these women don't have day jobs. This is their only income. And some women do have day jobs and then kind of do this on the side. So, but they're all they're working women, and so if you want to be in your movie, make them an offer.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And they're attainable. Like that's one thing I noticed meeting people, even for the podcast and pitching the podcast to people, like one of the best things about when you show your love and reverence and appreciation and respect for what they do, you usually get, for the most part, a lot back. I've found in dealing with people. Like a lot of the people I've spoken to and that I've met through conventions or events who fall into this category have all been like super friendly, super gracious, super happy to be acknowledged, happy, and they give you a lot. It isn't just like a hi, how are you, and then look down type thing. Like they want to engage, they want to have conversations. And so I wanted to ask, veering from the doc to what I think is your first book, The Assault of the Killer Bees. So the doc focuses on Linnea, Michelle, and Brinke primarily, like we said, but it does touch on a bunch of other people who have had similar roles. Now, this book, it highlights interviews with 20 cult film actresses. And I was just curious, you similarly to how they made how many, you kind of break this book up by franchise also. And I was just curious about, like, besides the big three, what made you seek out the people that you interviewed in this book? Because I know we mentioned briefly last time you were on how Jewel Shepard had written a similar book where she interviewed similar people. We kind of also came to the agreement that maybe like the attitude toward the material was a little different in your book than it was in her book. But I'm just curious, when it's like we're talking about how there's so many people now for whom that descriptor qualifies, why did you seek out these particular people? Or were these just, interviews you'd gotten from like the magazines that you wanted to archive?
Well, it's a mix. So some of the interviews in the book are extended. They're the full length, unedited articles that had run in the magazine. So, and then I went and I did go back to several of them and just kind of like got some updates and said, I'm going to put these in a book. The rest of them were just, I don't know. It's just women. I love promoting these women. And I feel like back when I wrote the book, there was a certain group of women, like it was a smaller group of actresses that were known for these B movies.
Yeah.
And like today, I don't even know who I would approach now, because I kind of like, there's so many movies, so many networks, so many streaming channels. Like all of these girls at varying levels of production are doing it. But back then in the 80s and 90s, which is really where I pulled a lot of the book from. I know the book is from Assault of the Killer Bees is from 2004, but I was really pulling from 80s and 90s, my teenage years.
Yeah.
So I think I fell in love with those particular women because I was watching them from the age of 12 to about 19, 20.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's probably like those identifying years when you kind of start to figure out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And they just left an impression on me as a middle school kid and high schooler. And I'm not trying to get any tears here, but I was like the nerd, right? Or the wallflower, and felt ostracized by classmates. So I went home and spent my weekends and my weeknights begging my mother to take me to the video store. And I'd come home with like 8 movies or however many they'd let you get. And that's what I spent my time doing, was watching these movies over and over. So I'm a repeater, right? I've seen Carrie literally over 50 times.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen Friday the 13th Part 2 probably upwards of 50 times.
My favorite one.
Right. So you start to kind of, it's going to sound weird. It's going to sound like I'm a stalker. You start to kind of think that you're friends with these people, right? And this caught me off guard. I'm not going to say who the actress was because she's lovely, but I was appearing at a convention a year ago, and there's a movie that I've watched over and over and over and over again for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And she was going to be at the convention. I was so excited to see her. And when I got up to her, she was a little old lady. And I was like, you forget that these are real human beings who age.
Yeah.
Right. And they made a movie for either 3 days or for 3 months or whatever. And then they went on with their lives. Right. And it's lovely that they're at these conventions. But now that so many years have passed, I'm starting to see these women become grandmothers.
Yeah. And
like I said, Brinke is in her 70s. Judith is, I believe, 81.
Wow.
You know, so I guess going back to your original question, I just felt like I was becoming friends with these with these women in the films because I was watching them over and over and over, and they never changed. Right.
Yeah.
They're always the same, and they're always there when I need them. Whenever I'm in the mood to watch Slumber Party Massacre 2, you know, because I want to sing of the hillbillies.
I would imagine is often because that's how it is for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of my favorites. So I think that's where it came from, and that's why I chose the women that I chose. And you would be surprised. And remember, this is pre-internet that I found these women. So this was calling SAG, calling other magazines, trying to hunt people down. So these were just a lot of the women I was able to find.
And this is, I'm purely just curious about this. There may not really be a story behind it, but like, of all the people, of the 20 that you interviewed that are in the Assault of the Killer Bees book, who was the toughest to track down?
Oh, geez. That's a hard one.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go back and look and see who I interviewed. Some of them. Well, here's would have been the toughest to track down was Felissa Rose, because
she was kind of out of the public eye at that point.
She was a housewife.
Yeah.
She had no idea. My story with Felissa goes, and I'll try and tell as quick as possible. I was working in a bookstore in Beverly Hills. She showed up with her husband and a couple of friends. They were on vacation. She'd only ever made Sleepaway Camp and maybe like 2 other movies and disappeared. She comes in, I helped her out. And as I'm looking at her, I'm like, this has got to be her. Because remember, last time you see her, she's 13 years old. So now she's an adult. And at some point, I finally said, "Are you Felissa Rose?" And her eyes like bugged out of her head. She ran from the store screaming, comes running back in. "Who put you up to this? Who put you up to this?" And I'm like, "Nobody." I you were, Angela. And this is what happened in the movie. She screamed and she ran out of the store again. Comes back the 3rd time. She's like, "Okay, my friends, they put you up to this. They put you up to this." I'm like, "No, here's what happened." And then I explained the whole story of Sleepaway Camp 1, 2, and 3 to make sure that she believed me. Okay. Fast forward like a year, I started working for Femme Fatales magazine. Another guy named Jeff Hayes had somehow found her, maybe on the internet. And he had created a Sleepaway Camp page. So I contacted him because I wanted to interview her for the magazine, and that was her first public thing. Was Femme Fatale's magazine. It was the 10th anniversary issue, which sold out. First issue in the magazine's history to completely sell out. Not a single magazine came back. So she just got a lot of widespread attention. And then all of a sudden, all these filmmakers of our generation were like, whoa, she's hot. Like Angela grew up looking pretty good.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, now she's Felissa Rose. And if you look at a lot of the early stuff that she did in the early 2000s, it's not so good. Right, there's a lot of super low budget, and I should knock it because that's what I do.
Hey, look, that's our bread and butter.
Yeah,
you know, but she did a lot of lower stuff, and now she's in Scary Movie 6.
Yeah,
right? And
she's like a convention workhorse. Like she is at every convention. She's a real. Again, like she's become kind of an ambassador. Yeah.
I was going to say she's kind of turned, from being completely out of the public eye to thinking that she was being put on, that someone recognized her, to now she is like a convention darling. Like I see so many photos of people, doing the Angela face with her. Like, she's collaborated on. She's been on a lot of Last Drive-In stuff. I'm pretty sure she's involved with the new iteration of the USA Up All Night with Rhonda Shear stuff that's going on. She's very busy, it seems.
Yeah, it's great.
And do you know, this is, I'm going to sound in here like I'm promoting myself, but I was the person who got her into her very first convention.
Oh, no kidding.
Awesome.
Yeah. So they asked me if I knew any. So Flashback Weekend in Chicago, their very first year said, do you know any celebrities? Because I was still at the magazine at the time. So they said, who could we bring in to do this? And I said, I just found Felissa Rose. Mm-hmm. So they brought her in, and she's sitting at her table for the very first time, and people start coming up to her, and she's like, I don't know what to do. And she only brought like 10 pictures with her, like 10 headshots. And that was it. She's like, what do I charge for these? Do I charge for autographs? Like, I don't know. She had no idea what to do. And back then you didn't charge for autographs. The celebrities would just sign your stuff for you. It wasn't like the insanity that it all is now. And then like, hundreds of people came to see her. It blew her mind. She had no idea that Sleepaway Camp was even a thing anymore. So,
well, that was one of those movies that didn't perform super, super well at the box office at the time. Like it was a low budget enough movie that it broke even, but it became a VHS like staple.
Mm-hmm.
And then now it's just got this incredibly huge cult following as this truly unique artifact, like a very, very strange, very interesting movie.
Well, it was a rite of passage because I got into these movies pretty young, and it was like Sleepaway Camp was one. I didn't discover it within the first kind of cycle of things that I found. It was shortly thereafter, but by the time I was probably like 9 years old or 10 years old, I had found Sleepaway Camp, and it became this thing where it was like I had to like. My friends who weren't allowed to watch R-rated stuff in general would come to my house, and when I got my hands on Sleepaway Camp and found Sleepaway Camp, I was like, well, I've got something that's going to blow your mind, like type movie. And so it was this like artifact. Yeah, it was this thing. And I remember, I feel like there are people I have to apologize to in my life because I scarred them when they were 9 or 10 years old by forcing them to watch Sleepaway Camp against their will.
The entire movie is wrapped up in that final shot,
which was controversial for a long time and has been kind of reassessed and reappropriated. We recently had reporter BJ Colangelo on our show who was talking about how that movie's been sort of reappropriated by the trans community as like an early form of representation, and it's kind of like unpacking a lot of the queer themes that are just sort of baked into that movie that were really misunderstood at the time and really kind of misrepresented and misreported at the time. So it's been a movie that's kind of had a long tail, and I think longer than probably anybody would have expected when they made it in 1983.
Right. And Felissa is working towards the remake, and she is very aware of how that movie reads today. Yeah. And she's keeping it close to her chest, but there is a way that they are going to approach that subject in the movie. So
I'm very curious to see that. Yeah, that's an exciting project. Well, we don't want to take up too much of your time. I know Jarrett's got somewhere to be at the moment. But speaking of secret projects, you teased us before we started recording that you might have an exciting reveal of something that you're working on, and we asked to be left in the dark until now, so we can experience this with everybody listening. But what
Yes,
are you
I'm
working on
excited.
right now, Jason?
I am within the next few weeks. I am going to begin filming Witchcraft 19 and 20.
No kidding. You're
Holy
keeping
shit.
it going. Oh my God. Amazing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and it's going to star Judith O'Day from
Hell
Night of the Living
yeah.
Dead.
Oh,
It's going to star Brinke Stevens because she's in everything that I do.
okay.
And Melanie Kinnaman, who was Pam,
Oh, yeah.
the final girl in Friday the 13th, Part 5.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And then several of my other common collaborators like Tina Pox-Dallas and Darcy Vanderhoff and Karen DeLewin. All of my usual entourage. So
amazing. Yeah. For those not
Super
familiar with the
duper fun.
Witchcraft series, that is a staple. That is a long, as you heard, 19 and 20. That is one of the longest running horror franchises out
it is
there.
the longest.
Yeah, it is the longest. Okay. Yeah.
It is the longest running horror franchise with the most installments. And it will be part 20 will be coming out on New Year's Day of 2028, which marks the 40th anniversary of the original film.
That's amazing. Oh, that's so exciting. Congratulations.
That's a prolific rate, man.
Yeah.
20
so
movies
I had
in
to take
40
that.
years.
How do you not do part 20, right?
You gotta. I mean, you're
No,
jumping at that
you have
chance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's so exciting.
For your book, Jason, they made how many book? It's like pretty soon. It's like the Witchcraft chapter is going to be like 40 pages long in this franchise book here.
Yeah, is this just part of your effort to be able to write another
I
volume
think
of this? You're padding your own numbers at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. No, what I love about that book, I know we're kind of wrapping up and getting towards the end of the episode here, but I did want to just mention, I do think fans of our show who we mentioned the book last time, we mentioned it briefly in this episode, but didn't get too much into what it is. So for Assault of the Killer Bees, it's interviews with Scream Queens. For this book, they made how many. What I love about this book is like Steve and I, along with I'm sure a lot of other people who listen to the show, are sort of like statistic nerds and who like to have lists of things. We like compendiums. We like things to be compiled. And so just, kind of quickly, this seems like a related but very different project. And I mean, horror franchises with lots of entries are amazing, but like what made you decide to, put all the work in for this? I know you have interviews tied into it, but also like there's a lot of stuff to cover in here. Yeah. So like what made you take on this project?
Or you mentioned it earlier. It was people would talk to me and they would go, and I would say like, oh, Witchcraft 15, and they're like, there was a Witchcraft 2, or Children of the Corn, or Children of the Corn 10. There was a Children of the Corn 3, and
Urban Harvest,
Charlize Theron,
right?
Yeah.
And so it really came from me. I'm about to be 53, still incredibly handsome, but
true.
I mean, we're just saying, but I was losing track. For my obsession with sequels, I don't know what is in my brain, but something about franchises makes me. I will watch any horror franchise simply because it is a franchise, no matter how horrible the previous ones have been. Like I watched all those Leprechaun movies.
Yeah, I did too.
Something in my brain just makes me love sequels, and it doesn't apply just to horror. Like I will watch comedy franchises, I will watch drama franchises. Horror obviously is my main focus.
Sure.
But I just love continuation. And the thing that they're like, oh my God, I can't believe they made a part 4. I'm like, yeah, but you watched 9 seasons of Roseanne. Like you watch episodic TV. And so a part 2 or a part 5 or whatever is only 90 minutes of your life, but you've watched 9 years worth of a sitcom or a drama on TV, especially nowadays, right? These limited series and whatnot. So if you're Stranger Things, right? The finale was like what, almost 2 hours long?
I think each episode of that season was like movie length, right? Yeah.
Right. So you're willing to watch an out like a 90 minutes to 2 hours of a TV show every week, but me watching Slumber Party Massacre 3 is outrageous.
At its tight 70-minute running time, you know, like we're probably getting in a lot faster than getting in and out faster than a Stranger Things episode.
So I really created the book for myself because I was losing track of how many there were. Because when Children of the Corn 10 came out, I was like, shit, what number is that? You know, and with the witchcraft movies, I was like, oh my God, there's 16. And that actually is the franchise that got me doing this, because so many people were like, how many witchcraft movies are there? So, you know, so that's really was the genesis of, I'm like, I've got to put this down, and nobody's ever done it. It's not even on the internet.
And that's the thing. I think that's why I wanted to take a minute to highlight the book, because I love the idea of the book. I love it for a number of reasons. One, because it's a good resource. I play horror trivia in a few different iterations. So knowing the specifics of sequels and franchises, even if it's like a really deep cut of a sequel that I haven't seen in a franchise, if I'm reading a synopsis, I may hold on to that information. But also the other thing is, like, this is the kind of book that I would see myself writing. Yeah. Because I also love just compiling stuff like that. Having all of these things with tight synopses in one place like that is like 100% speaks to me. I'm sure it speaks to people who listen to the show too. I think we attract, you know, a certain kind of audience who likes to have all of this information ready. And when I found the book too, I went, oh man, that's such a cool concept. And a lot of times it's always so rewarding to find when you're like, all right, this is where I'm going to put my energy. This is that thing I'm going to do. This is something that the world needs, in my opinion, and no one has done it. Yeah. And that's, yeah. And it's what a use of your time though, for the work. Yeah. Like, it's a gorgeous book. It's got a ton of incredible information in it. And it's just, sometimes there's a piece of media someone writes and you just feel like, or that long form, you know, In Search of Darkness type documentaries where you just feel kind of a kindred spirit. You're like, I'm the person who made this loves this thing as much as I do. Mm-hmm. And it's a rewarding thing to listen to. And, I knew we would have a great episode bringing you back on. I knew even going outside of the full moon stuff just to talk about these other projects you worked on would give us another great bonus episode. And I really feel like it has. And I think one of the things I was thinking about too in having you back on is it reminded me that I have and also some of the people you interviewed for the book also, it reminded me of like one of my bucket lists for the show is to somehow put together a Nightmare Sisters episode with all three of them. I don't know. I'm just going to start putting that energy out into the universe right now. I don't know exactly how long that would take or what kind of orchestration, but that, and then also, I think also just Cassandra Peterson. Yeah.
She was one of my pinnacles of interviews. I never thought I would see the day that I would get to meet her. And she is Elvira in real life, just slightly toned down.
Yeah, I hear she's kind of everything you would want her to be. Yeah, and I loved her autobiography. I thought it was phenomenal. If people out there haven't read Cruelly Yours, Elvira, it's phenomenal.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Well, Jason, thank you so much again for sharing your time with us. We always love having you on the show here, and we're so excited for these upcoming projects for you. Is there anything else you have coming up that you'd like to draw people's attention to, or just any plugs you'd like to drop here?
Well, I did just a couple months ago released another documentary, which is non-horror. It is called Everything. Oh shit! I just went blank. Everything I Need to Know I Learned from the Letter People, which is this behind me. If you guys see this, I know the audience can't see.
I was curious what those were. They look vaguely familiar to me, but yeah.
Yes. So you would have had them in kindergarten. They would blow up characters that were the size of the children, mostly. And it was just it was your reading program. It was how you learned to read. And as I aged, I
had that.
You had it? See? So it's just when people my age, when I brought it up, they were like, oh my God, the Letter People. And I was like, how does a reading program from school last for 50 years? So that is now out on disc. We are going to stream at some point. in the future, but if you're desperate to see it, you can get it from Makeflix. That's MAKEFLIX.com, which is where almost all of my stuff is available. You would just go under there's like a sidebar that takes you to other like production, like to me. You would look for B-Boy Productions.
Oh,
and that's where you'll find all my stuff. So
awesome. And I can say you will love some of that stuff, and again, buy Jason's books and rent the documentary and watch the documentary, or buy it. I'm sure he would appreciate that.
And they are on Amazon too. So I would recommend, if people are going to get They Made How Many, go for the second volume. It's got 50 additional titles in it. The book is almost 700 pages. So people are like, $35. I'm like, it's 700 pages. You can kill somebody with it. All right. So,
as a bonus. Yeah. You just get to do that. Yeah. And legally, I think it's allowed. So you're fine.
Exactly.
It's like 5 cents a page. You could afford it.
Yeah.
But no, you will 100% find something that you love. As I always say at this time in the show, if you're a fan of what we do week to week, the best way to show us is to go on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave a 5-star rating, maybe a brief review if you feel so inclined to do so. It will help us get the show out to more people. You can follow us on Instagram at puppetmasters_castlefreaks, or if you can follow me at _Giallo_Jared. We will post on our Facebook group and Blue Sky and some other places on the day of releases as well. We have our YouTube channel, which a surprising number of people use to listen to the show. I'm always kind of surprised by how many people take that route, but keep doing it, and maybe we'll eventually add some more video to it. But Steve is a very busy guy. Steve, what else have you got going on?
Well, I also host a show called Cinema Arcade. That's cinema and arcade mashed together. We are watching movies and playing the video games based on those movies, which gives us a very, very eclectic selection of movies to cover and talk about on our show. Everything ranging from Austin Powers to Minority Report to we have upcoming episodes on Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone, Space Jam, lots of very unusual movies that we get to cover. We talked about Vertigo a while ago. It really runs the gamut. So,
Steve, when is your Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers episode?
Oh, any day now. Yeah, I'm sure that's a great NES ROM I can find of that one. Yeah.
That's that one. That is one of the best B movies ever.
That movie is so fun.
It rules.
Yeah. Great. One of the best B movie titles for sure. Like Mount Rushmore of B movie titles is Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Jason, for being here. Always a delight. And thank you everybody for listening. And we will see you next time.